My entire childhood, my family had one nickname for me. The dumb one, the girl who couldn't keep up, the one they joked about at dinner, the one nobody expected anything from. But one ordinary morning, a phone call about a $47 million deal forced them all to realize they had been wrong about me. For my entire life, my name is Amelia Hayes, and I grew up in a small gray house on the edge of Cleveland, Ohio, where winter winds rattled the windows and family expectations were louder than the storms outside. My older brother, Marcus, was the pride of the family, honor student, debate champion, the kind of kid teachers bragged about. My younger sister, Claire, was the talented one, piano recitals, art competitions, constant praise from my parents. And me, I was the one who struggled to understand math homework, the one who read slower than everyone else, the one my dad would pat on the shoulder and say, "Don't worry, Amelia, not everyone is meant to be brilliant." It sounded gentle, but it always felt like a door quietly closing in my face. I remember one moment so clearly it still stings. I was 14, sitting at the kitchen table while my family talked about Marcus getting into a prestigious summer program. My uncle laughed and said, "Looks like the brains run strong in this family." Then he glanced at me and joked, "Well, except maybe Amelia." Everyone laughed. Even my mom smiled awkwardly. I forced a smile too, staring down at the wood grain on the table, wishing the floor would swallow me whole. From that moment on, the label followed me everywhere. Teachers expected less from me. My parents worried about my future. Even my siblings started talking to me like I was fragile, like I wouldn't understand complicated things. But what nobody realized was that being the quiet one meant I spent a lot of time observing. I noticed how people solved problems. I noticed patterns in conversations. I noticed things others ignored. When I was 16, I got a part-time job at a tiny electronics repair shop owned by a grumpy man named Carl. While other kids hung out after school, I sat behind the counter, watching him fix computers and phones. Slowly, I started understanding how things worked. Systems, software, little invisible connections inside machines. Carl noticed before anyone else did. One afternoon, he looked at me over his glasses and said, "Kid, you're not dumb. You just think differently." That sentence stuck with me longer than any insult ever had. Still, my family never saw that side of me. When I graduated high school with average grades, my dad sighed and said, "Community college might be your best option." Marcus went to Harvard. Claire moved to New York to study music, and I stayed behind, working long shifts and taking random classes while quietly teaching myself programming at night through free online courses. My room became a mess of notebooks, coffee cups, and glowing laptop screens at 2 in the morning. Years passed like that, quiet, invisible, forgotten in family conversations that celebrated everyone except me. But during those late nights, I started building something. A simple idea that grew slowly into a small platform designed to help freelancers manage contracts and payments automatically. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't flashy, but it solved a real problem. At first, almost nobody used it. 10 users, then 20, then 50. Still, I kept improving it, line by line of code, while my family continued believing I was drifting through life with no direction. Then one cold Tuesday morning, while I was drinking coffee in my tiny apartment, my phone rang with an unfamiliar California number. I almost ignored it, but when I answered, the voice on the other end said something that made my heart stop. "Amelia, we've been following your platform's growth. Our firm would like to discuss acquiring your company." And suddenly, the girl they called the dumb one realized her life was about to change forever. "We'd like to offer $47 million to acquire your company." For a moment, the room went silent, except for the distant sound of boats in the harbor. $47 million. The words didn't feel real. My mind flashed back to the kitchen table years earlier. The laughter, the nickname, the quiet humiliation. The dumb one. But 3 weeks later, the contract was signed. News spread quickly through my extended family. And suddenly, my phone was full of messages from relatives who had barely spoken to me in years. "We always believed in you," they said. But the moment that mattered most happened months later, when I visited home for Thanksgiving. The same house, the same dining table. My dad looked nervous as he poured gravy onto his plate, finally clearing his throat and saying, "Amelia, I guess we underestimated you." I could see the embarrassment in his eyes. And for the first time in my life, I felt something strange, Not anger, not revenge, just quiet understanding. Because the truth was, I hadn't built that company to prove them wrong. I built it because a small part of me refused to believe their version of who I was. And if you've ever been underestimated like that, if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, or doubted your own potential because of someone else's label, maybe this story is a reminder that those labels don't define your future. Sometimes the quietest people are building the biggest changes in silence. And if this story resonates with you even a little, take a moment to like this video and subscribe for more real stories like this. I'd also love to know where you're watching from. Drop your country or city in the comments below, because it's incredible to see how far these stories travel around the world. Even now, years later, I still keep the old notebook where I sketched my first messy idea late one night, while everyone else believed I had no direction. The pages are wrinkled and stained with coffee, but they remind me of something powerful. Sometimes the person everyone calls the dumb one is simply the person nobody ever took the time to understand. And sometimes that same person ends up changing everything.